We talk to right now Ed Bouchette. Ed, a very good morning to you. How you doing?
I'm great, Colin and Chris. Thank you.
Is it time to make a change at starting quarterback, Ed?
No, I don't think so. There's more problems than that this offense faces. You could say the same thing. Is it time to change running back because he's not getting any yards either? And I don't think so. I think it's time to change the offensive line, but you can't do that.
Well, can I make a suggestion here that a quarterback who could throw on the run, get under center, and run play action more, run design boot throws and rolls, would serve to hide the deficiencies of the offensive line more? Would you agree
So,
with that?
yeah, so you want Lamar Jackson here is what you want. I mean, who's on the roster who can do that?
Either one of the other two, I think, can throw on the run, and not a running quarterback. I think there's a big difference, and that's sometimes what people fail to kind of get intertwined, and it's not the case. A guy that can throw on the run isn't necessarily a running quarterback like Michael Vick, but Ben has shown no penchant to throw while his feet are moving, and I think that's become a big problem.
Well, they have, to quote Chuck Noll, they have many problems, and they are great. You can change the quarterback, and you can switch that one chair on the deck of the Titanic. I don't think it's going to do any. I don't think it's going to make any difference, Colin. I really don't.
Well, but could we agree that his decision making and his inability to hit guys seems to be the biggest problem for the offense right now? I know the offensive line hasn't been very good, and that's everybody's instant response, and it's true. But it seems that even when the line does block, Ben is not progressing through reads, or if he does progress through reads, not making the throws the way he used to. He looks like a shell of himself.
Well, I'm not going to go that far and say he's a shell of himself. Saw that first touchdown pass was pretty damn good. The others were, 6 inches away from being touchdowns? They weren't bad throws. Those weren't bad throws. Now, the ones that were bad that I saw were the short passes. He's throwing behind guys. He's throwing low. Those are the ones. Those deep passes I had no problem with.
Well, I had a couple problems with the deep passes, the ones that sailed over Juju's head that looked to be sure sixes that were just overthrows. You didn't have a problem with those?
Well, I just said they were about 6 inches from being complete. They weren't like sailing over his head, Colin. I mean, maybe Juju should have made the play on some of those.
But aren't we? I think what we're missing, Ed, is the fact that Ben used to be able to make these throws at one point. He used to be able to extend a play and find the next read, find a guy sitting in the middle of the field who was wide open, as Pat Fryermuth was on that fourth down swing pass to Najee yet again yesterday. He used to look like he was never uncomfortable, even under duress. And now he looks uncomfortable even when he's not under duress.
That's because he's used to being under duress behind this offensive line. He got killed on that one play where he fumbled. I mean, it's a wonder his arm didn't explode. The right guard, the former Pro Bowl guard, Trey Turner, got blown up on that play. Danny Moore got blown up on another one. I mean, it's tough to operate behind that offensive line. Now, having said that, Ben probably shouldn't have come back this year knowing what that line was looking like. You know, maybe he bought into the fact that they were going to be good enough, as it seems like everybody else did, but they're not.
Well, let's talk about that then. And I hate to revisit and dredge up other things. How did this decision all happen, and who was kind of is Art the second really like? Is it ultimately come down to him when Ben decided he wanted to come back?
I think there were discussions. There were, kind of hints that Kevin Colbert wasn't in agreement that he should come back. But Ben said right away, early on, that he wanted to come back, and for whatever reasons, for both sides, he came back. The offensive line, he had a good running back. Well, not at the time, because when he decided to come back, it was before the draft. He knew he had good wide receivers, although he probably thought he was losing Juju when he decided to come back. He didn't know what he had at tight end because they hadn't drafted Freiermuth yet. Again, I wrote this before his decision. I said, why would he want to come back for this? Now, I thought they did a good job patching, especially on defense, patching some holes they had and some depth problems they had. But that offensive line is the biggest thing that's dragging them down, and now the injuries to the defensive line isn't helping either.
Steelers insider Ed Bouchette joins us every Monday at 7 o'clock here on the Fan Morning Show. Let's turn to Mike Tomlin's direction now and ask why he makes the decision down 3 scores on Green Bay's side of the field on a 4th down to punt. And then later, I think it was even more egregious, down 10 with 4 minutes left after the Najee Harris touchdown. Rather than attempt an onside kick, he attempts some sort of pooch kickoff. It looks to me like he's living in his fears, like he says he doesn't do, Ed.
Yeah, I don't think he wanted the game to get away from him. I really think at that point,
Ed, all due respect, they were down 3 scores. It had gotten away from them. I don't understand the and then when they're down 10 with 4 minutes left, and Aaron Rodgers has been walking up and down the field on them. It flabbergasted me that they wouldn't at least try the onside.
Well, I just tried to say, I don't think he wanted the game to really get away from him. I don't think he wanted it to be 45-10. That's what I don't think he wanted. Whether you agree with it or not, I don't. I agree with you that he should have gone for it and should have tried the onside kick, but he didn't. And we've seen that time and again, the 4th and 1, right, where he didn't go for it a couple games ago. It just thinking that defense was going to stop Rodgers too was unthinkable. Should have been unthinkable.
Do you think if the call holds, and first of all, did you buy? I found a moment of comedy in Gene Steratore really not wanting to answer any questions about any of that. But do you think that if the score holds, the Hayden block, and it's different at halftime, the Steelers stand a much better chance of winning that football game, or that Rodgers was going to find magic anyway?
Well, he probably would have found magic anyway, but that's a 10-point swing. And his final was 10 points. Now, things change, but the Steelers would have been up at halftime instead of trailing, right?
Yeah.
So that could have been a big turning point, but we'll never know, and we'll never know if the Steelers could still stop Rodgers. Maybe Rodgers just puts it in another gear, and they just pull away from him anyway. But it certainly was a big turning point. As far as Gene Steratore, that was very disappointing. Gene usually speaks his mind pretty good and didn't there. I don't know why he didn't. I mean, it was an easy call, one way or the other, say something.
Ed, where do they go from here? I mean, if they're not going to make the change at quarterback because they believe that it all stems from the offensive line, you've laid that out, then what do they do? Where is the fix? Or are we staring down the barrel of 3-14, 4-13, and a top 10 draft pick?
Yeah, there's not a lot to fix at this point, Chris. I started covering the Steelers, and Chuck Noll was the coach, and he would always say, "Get back to fundamentals." And I'm sure that's all they're gonna do is start talking about, getting back to basics. What that is, I'm not sure, but they do have 4 of the next 5 games at home. This is the time to stop the bleeding if they can do it. Denver's beatable. I think Seattle's beatable. And if you win those next 2, you're 500, and then you just, recalculate. But they got a lot of work to do.
Who's the best team in the AFC North right now, Ed?
I think Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to be resilient, and but the Browns pulled out one kind of a crazy one yesterday, 14-7. You don't see those scores much more between contenders in the NFL. I don't think it's Cincinnati. I really don't. But I think I don't know, one of those two. I'd say Baltimore right now.
Ed, let me go back to something you said earlier because I scribbled it down and wanted to come back to it before we let you run. You mentioned, because of the offensive line, you could change the quarterback, you could change the running back. There's lots of reasons. I think Najee came in with one of the worst yards per carry rates of any running back in the league yesterday. But yesterday it looked like he actually did start to find some traction on the ground. He only got 15 carries because of the position they were in, being behind the entire second half. To your eyes, does it look like Najee Harris is, even behind this offensive line, starting to find something?
Well, I was being facetious about Najee Harris.
No, I know you were.
Him out. Okay. Because I think he's a good back who just isn't getting any room. The only time he gets room is when he runs to the outside. There's nothing on that interior line. I'm surprised Kendrick Green is still at center. I see things. Yeah, but he averaged over 4 yards a carry still behind that line. He only had 62 yards, but he only had 15 carries. I say only. We're used to backs here in the 20s. That's not the problem. Najee Harris is going to be fine, and he helps the passing game. Although Ben was throwing behind him and everything else yesterday. Again, I don't know. Maybe we overrate these receivers. Deontay Johnson did a nice job on the one, but I don't know that Juju. I think he could have had a better effort on a couple of those.
All righty. Ed, we appreciate it. We'll take care of little Poppy. Is he doing okay, by the way? Baseball playoffs
He's
for
sleeping.
him.
He's up sleeping, snoring.
Yeah, well, good. It's a dog's life. Thank you much, Ed. We'll talk next week.
All right, fellas. We'll see you.
I'll
Thanks,
see you.
Ed.
I thought Najee Harris may have been the best Pittsburgh Steeler yesterday on offense. I mean,
on offense, certainly.
he didn't quit. He
fought a lot. I thought he fought much more than he had the first 3 weeks.
I absolutely agree. I thought Deontay Johnson was pretty good, too. I thought Juju just didn't get the rock. Juju could have had 2 runaway touchdowns, and that changes everything. Changes the complexion on, wow, Juju beat somebody, because he did twice.
Yeah.
And you're looking at Juju as a different receiver right now, and it was nothing that he didn't do.
The offensive line didn't cause Ben to overthrow Juju on those 2 balls.
No. How about Ebron with 2 catches and Gentry out? Gentry is so big, it's unbelievable.
Enormous. He looks like Shaq out there with a bunch of little kids. He's that much taller than everyone.
And I'll tell you, I like Freiermuth as a receiver. If he can't block, he's going to have a real hard time in the league, though. And he hasn't shown an ability. They have to take him off the field. And he needs to block in the NFL, or he's going to have an uphill battle. And he has to gain that part of his game.